Hi, everybody, and welcome to week 3 of our 8-week accelerated environmental science lab online. This week, I'm very excited. This is one of my favorite weeks in this class because all you're going to do is learn how to observe in nature and how to talk about species in a scientific way, okay? So let's take a look. Boop, here we go. All right, so going into module 6. If you need more time for modules 4 and 5, just send me an email, okay? I'm totally fine giving extensions. Just let me know what's going on. Someone contacted me and said they needed a bit of an extension on one of the earlier labs, and that's totally fine. Oh, you can't see my face. There we go. That was weird. Just let me know, and I'm happy to work with you, okay? Because I know stuff comes up, and this class is very fast and kind of fast-paced and has a lot going on. So just let me know. Be in communication, and everything will be great. Okay, so let's talk about observing nature, okay? This is one of the things where you're going to learn how environmental scientists just kind of sit and let their senses open up and take in everything going on around them. Unfortunately, sometimes this can be very hard to do. We have so many things on our brain. We have so many things that we need to be doing or we think we need to be doing. Oh, there's just so much. So it's hard to just kind of sit and wait. Okay, I think this is why meditation has become so popular, because if you think about it, a lot of meditation is just sitting and not doing anything else, which is so important to the human brain because usually we're just stressed out all the time. And if you are chronically stressed as a human, it can lead to a lot of stress problems. Most of the, if not all, of the top 5 major things that lead to death in the United States, I'm not sure about other countries, but definitely in the United States, are stress related. If you have cardiac related or breathing related diseases, they are often attributed to too much stress. So nice thing about doing nature observations is you get to just sit and not be stressed, because the entire thing is just sit there and do nothing except observe, okay? So when I've done this with students in the past, they have definitely said things such as, oh, this has made me, I've never, had the chance to just sit in nature, and now it's a grade, and they really appreciate it. So I hope you get a lot out of this, okay? You're going to be learning how to engage all of your senses. We are apes, and so we are very, very visual animals. If you look at an animal's brain, you can see which of its senses it uses the most, and our visual cortex is very, very big. Our cerebral cortex is even bigger, though, because we actually think more than we do anything. But as far as the senses that we take in, when we take in information, we're very, very visual. We're a bit, we have some smell that we just don't realize we're doing, like we smell each other's pheromones or the pheromones of other mammals, but it's not as prevalent as our sight, right? And hearing, obviously, we don't do a lot of going around and tasting the world. That would be a little dangerous. Don't just randomly taste things on the ground. But it is another one of those senses, and then obviously touch is also another huge one for us. But this is going to be all about what you observe in nature, okay? So here's the thing. There's going to be some things in this which I'm going to try not to make assumptions, but I want you to do this in whatever way works best for you, okay? So going into nature could be uncomfortable or inconvenient. If it's not safe, don't do it, okay? Don't do it just for a grade. That's bananas. Your health and safety is more important than getting a good grade on the lab, okay? So if you, just let me know. So there's so many different ways to do this lab in a way that is very safe and healthy. Okay, so the purpose of this first exercise is to make sure that is to have you go into a natural place and engage your senses. Okay, so you're going to take something to sit on, or if you know you'll be able to go out and find like a boulder or something to sit on, you could do that. Two of the biggest things you need to worry about in nature are the sun and staying hydrated, and possibly bug spray, depending on where you live and what bugs are out, such as mosquitoes, or if you live somewhere that has different kinds of insects that are more dangerous, bring bug spray. Okay, definitely bring sun protection, such as sunscreen, a hat. The kind of clothing that actually protects you the most are long sleeve white shirts, which you may think, ugh, wearing a long sleeve shirt in the sun, are you kidding me? It's actually better because the sunlight reflects off of your white shirt back into the atmosphere instead of heating you up, okay? Definitely bring water to stay hydrated, or a Gatorade or something. Even if you only have soda, it's still hydration, okay? So it's not the best choice, but it's still hydration, okay? Definitely don't bring alcohol, because often you can't have that in certain public places, and that actually will dehydrate you even faster than anything else, okay? I'm not saying don't drink ever, just don't do it during this assignment, okay? You're going to need a way to record observations. You're welcome to do this electronically, obviously. I am a big, big fan of recording things by hand because I am obsessed with nature journals. So these are nature journal pages I've taken from students in the past where I've had them go record the weather conditions and then look at something in nature and describe what you see in a way you may have never described it before, okay? And this comes from my love of looking at people's journals, so you can see different things, where I've had students go and look at describe different species, say what they had. I wonder why it's so this or that, and you're going to learn that. And it comes from looking at journals like this, where people go into nature, they observe something, and then they just start talking about it, and they say, oh, here's what this looks like, this is what that looks like. I love this so much. If you're an arts person, this is your chance to really shine and show off your art skills in a scientific setting. So I really like this. Well, that's not nature, but it's an interesting example. I really like using journals as a way to do science. That's different, because it's a way to it allows you to express yourself in a different way. So I went to a really good talk by an artist a few years ago that said the only people who continue to doodle after their children are artists, people who are artists, and scientists. They're the only two big groups who will continue to doodle without any kind of fear of worrying if it's good or not, because who cares if it's good or not? Just do it. It's not like you're going to get famous from your journals, right? And so it really stuck with me that, scientists, we doodle all the time. So here was a student who was thinking about climate change and how emissions are a lot of times the decrease in the intake of red meat actually helps decrease carbon dioxide overall. And so while they were thinking about this, they were doodling, and that opened up a part of their brain they hadn't really used before when they were thinking about this. And then they actually, outside of these notes, came up with a really good project as a result. Here's some more professional ones that I've seen. This is definitely a professional one. I am in love with the nature journal is what I'm saying. So this is one way to record your observations. Obviously, you don't have to do that. You could just take notes on your phone. And so you might say, well, what do you mean? What notes am I taking? And here's the assignment itself, okay? So there's two big assignments this week. One is being present in nature. This is just, you're going into nature and you're just letting it all come to you, okay? So you're going to find some place in nature where you can spend about an hour or two making observations. Now, originally this assignment said not a grassy park with soccer fields and picnic tables. I want you to find some place that might look like it did about 200 years ago. Now this is 200 years ago may or may not actually be wild depending on where you are, and also especially considering where you are, you know people were living on the land 200 years ago, okay? So I had a student once who I said, well, what was on the land where you live right now 200 years ago? And they said nothing. And I was like, what do you mean nothing? It can't be nothing. Do you mean the void of space? And they just said, no, it was nothing, because there was, and in her brain there was no development on that land, so it was nothing. Well, it was actually a forest originally, and it was inhabited by the native inhabitants of the land. Specifically in this case, it was the Tonga who, or Tongva, I think it's Tongva is how it's pronounced. And to her, she had never really thought about, well, if my house wasn't there and there was no development, then it's nothing. But there's always something there. But the point of this is to think about, you know the difference between going to a very well-manicured park where, like, people have birthday parties versus going to a park where there might be some open area where you could just go sit and take things in, okay? So you want to go to a place where you'll be able to see a lot of different species. You'll see lots of different species of plants and animals, not just, the Kentucky blue stem grass that they put on all fields ever, and then they have to put a whole bunch of fertilizer on it because it's not native to those areas, and so it doesn't want to live there, and so you have to really put a lot of grass, feed, and a bunch of water on it to try and force it to live there. My dog is making funny noises because he is mad at me about being mad about golf courses. But so if you go to one of the state parks or a national park, if you live in Monterey, like there's lots of areas around Monterey where you can just go and take in the nature. If you're walking, one of the things I really miss about Monterey is I would love to go on, just walk, like go south, like almost not quite to Carmel, but just go to the beach, and there's like a walking path, and you can just sit on a bench and watch the ocean. Okay. Oh, it's one of my favorite. Oh, I have pictures. Of course I have pictures. And this is one of the things where this is not a situation where you're going to take Instagram pictures. You're going to do a TikTok. This is very different in that you are, and I'm not saying that to be a jerk because I'm really not, but this is going to, like, a lot of times people go and they just want to take pictures and then they're done. Okay, well, I was sitting in Pacifica once, and which is south of San Francisco, and I was sitting on a bench, and I was noticing how the marine layer, which is this layer of clouds that are a certain density and temperature, so that they exist above oceans that are cold, and they move in and out depending on the time of day and how hot it is. And all of a sudden, I saw this spout, and it's very hard to get a good picture, but this was a whale. Suddenly, there was a whale, and I lost my mind. It was a 35-year-old woman screaming and crying because I saw a whale, y'all. Oh, it was amazing. It was beautiful. I kept trying to take pictures, could not do it. But I started bringing my dog out with me when I did this, and I would sit, and he would get bored because we're just sitting instead of doing anything. But then he would hear the whales before I would see them, which was very, very cool for me to see him get excited. He didn't know what he was noticing, but he heard something, and then we'd see a spout. And so it was easier for me to kind of hone in on where the whales were coming from. So by sitting and just letting this happen, I was able to see more biodiversity than I thought I would ever get to see, because I saw whales. While I was seeing whales, I also saw a shark. So a lot of times people think that if there are dolphins in the water, there are no sharks. That is not true. Dolphins and sharks eat the same food very, very often. So just, be smart when you're swimming in the ocean, and know that it's not shark infested waters, it's their home. Okay, so just be smart about if you go swimming in the ocean. The California current makes it very, very cold to swim in the on the west coast, so that does keep us a bit protected from the sharks. But you do hear every year about one or two people being attacked by a great white shark. Usually they don't. They end up fine, and in every single case, the person says it wasn't the shark's fault, and I still am going to go back into the ocean, because it's usually a surfer or a marine biologist who's in the water just, doing their thing, and they get a bit too close to a shark, they get too excited, and they start flailing like I do when I get excited, and then the shark gets nervous and bites them. It's not like they have hands to push people away, right? So they just have their teeth. I think about that when my dog wants to bite. He doesn't bite me, but he likes to put his teeth on me and pull me places, because he can't hold my hand like a toddler, right? Okay, back to nature. There actually were at least 3 whales this day, and while I was looking at the whales, I also noticed these pelicans, which look like little pterodactyls. There were a bunch of other animals too, and I now when I went back and looked at the picture, I noticed, there's a lot of really cool native grasses going on here too. Just by sitting in this spot for an hour, I was able to see so many things. And one thing is that because I was sitting in this space and being quiet, stuff started coming up to me, right? Like, so let me see if I can find, here you can see it now. When I was walking along the beach, I was seeing things in Monterey. This is in Monterey off of, Lover's Point, I think it's called. And like, just look at the biodiversity in this area. So there's the beaches on this side, and look, you can just, if you were to count how many different species are present, there's so many. Okay, that's going to be important in the second part of this. We'll talk about that. I also, if you just sit and you watch the seals, sometimes this comes from this picture I sent my dad once. I said, hey, can you count how many seals are in this picture? And he goes, yeah, I see 3 of them. I was like, actually, there's 6, because there's this one over here, there's this one guy just sleeping, there's this really little one doing what's called bananaing, which is where they just flex their tail and put that into the air. We're not exactly sure why. And then there's these 3 ones that seem really obvious, okay? So while I was just sitting here, I got to watch more seals come by, because I was sitting for so long and just watching, just using my eyeballs, and like I was smelling, and the seals have a very distinct smell to them. I will say, do not walk up to any wildlife, because that can be very dangerous, especially seals. If you've never seen a seal skull, let's just look at that right quick. They're not your friends. They want to bite you. Okay, so this is a leopard seal skull. We don't have leopard seals in Monterey, but where you are, you might have leopard seals. If you look at a seal skull, they look very much like a bear skull. So they can bite you very badly. So please do not harass the seals. Not only is it illegal, you're not allowed to become within like 5 feet of any marine mammals in the U.S., but it's illegal for a reason, in that if you were to get close to them, they could injure you. Okay. Okay, back to pictures of nature. Beep, boop, boop. Okay, so I was sitting in this spot out in Monterey, and I was actually admiring the different colors. I noticed that the rock was these different colors, and you see how I just said, oh, I noticed this. That's going to be something you can use to write down in your observations to help you kind of get your flow going. And so while I was sitting there, this squirrel popped up, this ground squirrel, and this is very different than the squirrels you see in the trees who are kind of bold. This is a native squirrel. Those squirrels you see in the tree that look like this are called fox squirrels. If you have these, I'm very interested to see what kind of animals are in Japan, by the way, for our Japanese student. Very excited. Or if the folks whoever's in Chicago has a different kind of squirrel. So this is the fox squirrel. It's kind of taken over North America. It was East Coast, and then it just kept pushing further west. And it's actually displaced a whole lot of the native squirrels. So like this guy. And it's kind of a problem. So whenever we see squirrels that don't look like that, it's very exciting because we're saying, oh, hey, that's one of the native squirrels. And what we're going to see, what you'll notice is these only live on the ground, so they're called ground squirrels, and the fox squirrels live in trees, okay? So they have this separation in space where they live, so they can both live in the same place and eat food without kind of taking over for one or the other. Okay. So that's some more observations. So when you're doing this, you're going to be noticing, oh, by the way, I do want to say, maybe it's uncomfortable. So for part of this, you want to close your eyes and just kind of let the sounds come to you, okay? Do you hear bird sound? Do you hear insect sounds? Do you hear human sounds? Do you hear any, like, the sounds of highways? Do you hear people? Do you hear somebody? Oh, yeah, I live in Los Angeles, and there are people who like to go hiking. Do they hike only for exercise? And which is good exercise, but I am someone who likes to go hiking to look at nature because I'm that person. And I am the person who will walk the slowest because I want to see the birds. I want to see the bugs. I want to look at that rock. Why isn't anyone looking at this rock? Oh my God, there's a frog. Look at the frog. Which is why I make a good science professor. Where was I going with this? There are people in Los Angeles who will walk up what's called Runyon Canyon, which is where everyone goes to go hiking, y'all. It's a trail up to the Hollywood sign, and people will blast their music on their phones. And if you're someone who loves to blast your music, that's awesome. But if you're doing it on a hiking trail, you're a jerk, okay? Because it's not nice. Because what you're doing is you're disturbing the wildlife when you do that, and you're disturbing other people when you do that, and it's just inconsiderate. And it's more annoying to me that you are disturbing wildlife than if you're disturbing people, right? Because it's not like the wildlife has a choice in where they can live, especially now. Their choice in where they can live is getting smaller and smaller as humans take over more and more of the land, right? So definitely when you're doing your nature watching, your nature observations, be very considerate of that. If you're like me and you like to take your dog with you, make sure you keep them on leash because there was this really good ad campaign where it's got a boy running down a beach and his dog is running into some birds, and it's so fun and the birds are flying. But to the birds, it looks like death is coming, right? Because they don't know it's just a happy dog. That dog might want to eat them. Maybe they're trying to mate. Maybe they're taking care of their young. They don't know. And so it's actually illegal in a lot of beaches to take your dogs because of the Migratory Bird Act that protects birds because we almost killed them all with bad pesticides. So when you're going to sit there and you're going to sit quietly and you're going to just close your eyes and listen, you might not be super comfortable doing this by yourself. So if you want to take someone with you and kind of keep an eye on you, that's very smart. I am the worst person about this, but you should always go hiking with a buddy. I usually like to go by myself because I'm a rebel, Dottie. But no, it's because I always want to go at random times. I never wear the right shoes, but I'm always just like, I know I saw this one animal and I want to go look for it some more, and I want to take videos for my students and all these things. And so make sure you are safe when you're doing this, okay? There's been a couple close calls when I'm out hiking by myself, and it's not great, and I need to be better about it. Okay, so by the way, if you can't go into someplace very, very wild, just pick something that's, as wild as you can get, okay? If that happens to be a yard, if you have a yard, that's fine too, because you can still look for the wild components in any situation. You might be able to hear birds. People might have bird feeders. You might have interesting bugs if you have flowers, that kind of thing, okay? So go through your senses. Close your eyes and just see what you can hear. Okay. See what you feel. Does it feel hot? Does it feel cold? Is there a breeze? I am very excited because it's finally not 100 degrees in SoCal. It has been 100 degrees for like 3 days. And so, and actually I made a video about it, with some, we'll get back to it in a second. Anyway, I saw a beehive, and a lot of the bees had come out of the beehive because it was so hot. If they stayed in the beehive, they would have died from their own body heat. And so a lot of bees do this thing where if an invader gets in their hive, they all get around that invader and they start buzzing, and there's so much body heat created just from all those bees sitting on the wasp or whatever that the wasp dies from heat. Okay, so it's like a little cuddle party that ends in death. So definitely be conscious of that for the animals you're observing and for yourself. If it gets too hot or too cold, please take care of yourself, okay? Okay, so that's what you feel. You've done your hearing, you've done your feeling. What do you smell? Are you by the ocean and does it smell like the ocean? Are you by a lake? Lakes have a bit of a different smell than the ocean, I've always thought. What you're smelling is that algae, okay? If you're in the middle of a field, does it smell like a certain kind of grass? Does it smell, maybe one of the things I'm going to say is you can use these idea starters. Like this reminds me of, and I was sitting in a field once doing this observation activity, and it reminded me, I just had this big sense memory of smelling the creek next to the house my grandparents lived in when I was growing up, because I would always sneak away and go play in the creek because I really wanted to see if there were crawfish or fish. And my grandma, who was like a very devout Catholic lady and very high class and which means often very racist, was very like upset because I was a little girl playing in the dirt. But who cares? I turned into a scientist. It's great. So don't be afraid to get dirty, by the way. But these are 3 great sentence starters if you're trying to describe what you're sensing. Okay, so I notice that I can smell the flowers, or I notice that I can hear something. Is it a bug? Is it a bird? I'm not sure, but I definitely didn't notice it before. Okay. Okay, so that's hearing, smelling, and then this is very, very hard, but try to kind of turn your brain off and just let the nature in, okay? I know it's hard. It's hard for me, and I do it on purpose. I get paid to do it. So sit with your eyes closed. If you can for 15 minutes, this can feel uncomfortable, not just because of safety reasons, but because, okay, again, this is written by my coworker, but that's fine. Because it's very hard to force ourselves to relax without someone else being there to tell us to relax. Like, how many people can do yoga at home by themselves versus, if I'm in a class, I'll actually do it. Like, I cannot tell you how many times I've meant to sit and do yoga during COVID, and instead I watched television because, you know what, I'll get to yoga soon. It's fine. But if there's no one there telling you to do it, it's hard to do it. So if you want to take someone with you and say, hey, I have to do a lab, you should help me, you absolutely should. And if you want, take so many pictures like I do. Like, there may be things where you're like, I don't know what this is, but it looks really cool. So for example, this is actually on Monterey campus. I was tromping through the woods behind the life science library and our life science building, and I noticed this. Okay, this is called a Dudley eye, and you may notice it because it's a succulent that people have that you can buy basically anywhere. They actually are native to our parts of California, and there's a huge problem now with people poaching them. They go and they find where they are wild, and then they just take them all off of native land. And the problem with that is if you take anything out of an ecosystem, we don't know what depends on this for life. Obviously something was, messing with it here. Something probably eats it. It's probably providing nutrients for something else. And then people just take it out of the environment completely. Oh, that's the worst. But when I looked at this, the more I kept looking, I realized, hey, these are interesting little mushrooms. Okay, they don't look like your traditional looking mushrooms, so that's very interesting, right? There's in the leaf litter, so this is leaf litter, so it's litter on the ground. It's leaves on the ground. You see different kinds of seeds. You see different kinds of rocks, etc. I probably kind of swished my hand through it to see if there were any bugs, because bugs can be interesting. This is on the bridge behind the life science building at Monterey, and I took this picture because this is a red bridge, but you see all these things growing on it, and these are lichens. Okay, so lichens are they're not an animal. They are a weird what are lichens actually? I am very lichen. Okay, so it's called a composite. That's right, a composite organism. There'll be an algae and a fungus living together symbiotically. Okay, and if they are living symbiotically and they're both getting something out of it, that's called mutualism. And so the interesting thing is that lichens are the first organisms to take over a new environment. So that's why they can grow in places where nothing else grows. Okay, if this were, like, for example, a place where a mudslide happened or a fire happens, the first things that come in and start making the soil work again are the lichens, and then follow the plants, and then the animals come. Maybe fungus do whatever they want in there. Fungus are super bananas. People are still trying to figure out what's going on with fungus. It was just released this week that fungus might talk to each other with electrical signals. That's awesome and crazy. But yeah, so notice this is just on the bridge. It's just, look at all the diversity of these species. Here's one that's just very flat. Here's one that kind of branches and is orange. Okay, so there's at least 3 different species going on here. It's very interesting. Okay, this is, my dog got away from me on the leash, and then I got so distracted by how cool this cliff looks that I took a picture instead of grabbing him first. But it also tells us a lot of things. So here's a plant that can grow vertically, which is kind of an impressive feat. And this is another situation where organisms, like if you watch Jurassic Park, life finds a way. And so wherever there is a place to live, something will live there, okay? So that was interesting. This is actually just a very funny, it's an algal ball that has 3 different species of algae living on it, or like just living together. And it looks like a cute little bunny. And so I took a picture of it. But then what I did next is what you're going to do in the second part of this experiment. Okay, so let's go back through this. So, when you're writing your observations, you're going to do it in this kind of format. Put the date, the time, the location. If you want to use your GPS on your phone to give your latitude and longitude, you can. That's very scientific and exact, but you don't have to. You can just put a general idea. Talk about what you observed, what you feel, what you smell, what you hear, what did you see, how did your visual observations tie into the things that you got from your other observations. Like maybe you were closing your eyes and you heard something, and then when you open your eyes, you were able to find what was making that sound, and it was a cool bird, or maybe it wasn't a bird at all. Maybe it was a weird bug. Cool. Okay. So the first part of this experiment is just to do a 1 to 2 hour nature observation. Okay, fabulous. Okay, and then you're going to turn this in. Fabulous. Moving on. The second part, you're going to start looking at specific species and giving their actual names. Okay, so this is this is going to show you for you. So you're walking along, you see this. So when we give species names, we give the genus and the species, because often like Homo sapiens, that's humans, right? That's the example we're using here. It turns out there were many other human species. Okay, it's just that our species, the Homo sapien. What have I done? The Homo sapien species, we are the ones that live, that basically won natural selection, okay? There's so many different species of humans that existed before now, right? So Homo sapiens took over, and we became the dominant species. A lot of people like to say, well, this evolved into this, that's not how evolution works, okay? This is a nice way to draw it, but evolution doesn't work this way. Evolution works where, like think about dogs and wolves. Dogs evolved from wolves, but wolves still exist, or like species similar to the wolf, but the wolf still exists. So it's not like all the wolves went away because dogs are here. In the case of humans, though, we had something happen. There was actually an ice age about 150 million years ago that killed all human species except for about 150,000 Homo sapiens, and that's who we are all descended from. And so it's actually very interesting. Okay. Anyway, when we describe those species or other species of humans, or if we talk about the dog, or if we're talking about the wolf, so dogs are called Canis canis, that's their scientific name. And the reason why we care about scientific name is because it's very easy for somebody to come along and say, hey, what's this? And you just to say, oh, it's a blackberry, or oh, it's a this, okay? For example, growing up in Texas, we had what we were calling the Indian paintbrush. But if I were to ask anyone what an Indian paintbrush was in California, California, they say this. This is not what we called an Indian paintbrush in Texas. Okay. Same thing with we had bluebonnets in Texas, because I grew up in Texas. In California, they're not called that. Oh my God. They're just called lupins, which is their species name. Okay. It's basically it's the same plant, but in different places in the world, they're called different things. Okay. So in order to keep things in a way that everybody knows what you're talking about scientifically, we use scientific naming. Okay, so that always includes the the genus and the species. A lot of times the species are just going to be named after after like people. Okay, so okay, so sometimes we don't know the exact species, or maybe the species name isn't exactly sometimes they change. So, for example, when I was in grad school, I studied stingrays. So, of course, in my early 20s, I got a stingray tattoo. Many scientific tattoos on me because I'm so cool, y'all. And the name of the species that I studied has been renamed since I got out of grad school because they realized that it was closer related to something else than what they originally thought. Because a lot of times we look at two different animals or two different organisms and we say, obviously, the raccoon is related to the panda. Okay, so let's look at raccoons and pandas. Okay, so for a long time before people, especially the red panda, right? So here we go. So for a long time, people said raccoons and pandas and red pandas are all closely related because, hello, just look at them. Well, that could be something called convergent evolution. So convergent evolution is like how bats can fly. They are not the same as birds, but they definitely fly like birds, sort of. So bats and birds are not related, but they have similar features. So that's what's happening here at the panda and the raccoon is people like, obviously they're closely related because, hello, look at them. Turns out DNA evidence is very confusing. We do not know how closely related these two animals are. There is another animal called the raccoon dog, which is native to parts of Estonia and Japan. There's two different species, and it's called the tanuki, or it's the anglicized version is the raccoon dog. And look at it; it looks like a raccoon that's also kind of a dog. It's not a raccoon at all. It's a kind of it's a canine. It's just that it happens to look a little bit through convergent evolution like a raccoon because of the shape of its face and its eye mask, right? There's a lot of really cool mythology around the tanuki. I would love to hear more if anyone has experience with them. They're very crazy cool. Do not keep them as pets. Okay, moving on. Again, so the point of this was that unless you know the scientific name, it's very hard to know how something is related to something else, first of all, and what it actually is if you're used to calling it something else. So even look, putting in raccoon dog, I got a turtle. What is happening? So again, also don't just trust the first thing you Google. Okay, moving on. So we're gonna do this little quiz about this. And I don't need to submit it. Okay. Excuse me. Let's move on. Okay. The next part of what you're going to do for this week is the analyzing part of your nature observations, and I highly recommend you use an app called iNaturalist, okay? So iNaturalist is one of my very favorite apps in the entire world because, it's completely free, and it adds to the scientific base of knowledge, okay? So I just signed up with my Google account, very easy peasy. And what it does is it allows you to upload photos, and then someone else will tell you, someone who is an expert will say, hey, I absolutely know what that is. And they won't tell you this, but they're basically saying, hey, thank you for recording that it lives in this place because now I know that this species also lives here. Okay, so one of the hardest things to do as an ecologist or an environmental scientist is finding your species, especially if it's something that moves like a bird. I did bird research in college where I looked at white-crowned sparrows, and those freaking birds guess what? They can fly, so it's very hard to collect them sometimes or to know where they were. Okay, so what I did when I saw this really cool flower was, let me tell you, if iNaturalist existed when I was in college, everything would have been so much easier. But what you do is you upload a picture. So I'm going to show you how to do this. So let's say I'm going to upload a picture. I'm going to choose, and you do this on your phone, but obviously I'm doing this here because it's easier. Let's see. Oh, that is my friend's. That's a meme. My friend's garden is very pretty right now. That's the wrong school. Y'all. NPC. Here we go. All right, I want to know what a certain species is. Now, this would be a very bad picture to upload because it's got many, many different species in it. I want one single species. So I'm going to upload this. This isn't super great because it has a butterfly and it has flowers, but let's do the lichen instead. Let's see. Let's say I want someone to identify what this lichen is. I'm going to upload it. And guess what? Because of how digital photos work, it's already tagged where it was found because that's what our photos do. Okay? If you're uncomfortable with having your location on the internet, you can use a different app called Seek. This is specifically, this was created for minors to use because minors aren't supposed to have an online presence that is trackable, okay? And so one thing is in iNaturalist, you can totally tell where I live in iNaturalist because wherever I have taken pictures of everything in my neighborhood, so you can see exactly where I walk my dog because that's where most of my observations are located, right? So here we go. I'm going to okay, so everything's fine. I'm just uploading it. I don't care about anything else. I'm going to upload. I'm going to submit for people. This has a picture. What are you talking about? Sometimes you just kind of have to make it do it because it doesn't know what it's doing. Okay, so something. Now, someone's going to come in here and be like, here's what it is. Okay, let me tell you. But what you can do before then is go to suggest an identification. Okay, and I'm not exactly sure, but it will load things that it think it might be. Look, it automatically loaded that it's a lichen. So if you're like, I wonder if it is this pin, whatever, and I'm going to just put it there, and that's what I think it is. Now, and you'll see it marked exactly where it happened in the world, right? So now whoever is a lichen expert or a lichen hobbyist will be able to go and say, hey, is that what that really is? And then they'll put what it really is, okay? It's fabulous. But look what it did. I have a name for it now. This is the common name, but here's the scientific name, and that's what we're looking for, okay? So if you go, so like I was saying, if you go and you look at where, one thing I love about iNaturalist, by the way, is you can just explore your neighborhood. Okay, so here is everyone who's doing iNaturalist in the world. Y'all, it's so many because this app is so robust and so wonderful to use, okay? But if, let's say I want to go into my neighborhood and see what kind of stuff, actually, what is this? This is where scuba divers or people on boats have taken observations, and I want to know what the heck they're doing. What did they notice out here that they decided to take a picture of? A white-winged dove. That is bonkers. So this boat had a dove on it. That's pretty cool. Okay, and this research grade means that somebody with a PhD went in and said, yeah, that's absolutely a white-winged dove. Good job. Okay, let's see what else. Here is a petrel. That's another kind of bird. There's an albatross. Oh, very interesting. Okay. Anyway, and you'll see in each one of these cases you get either you just get the genus because they don't know the species, and that's fine, or you get the genus and the species. I could play with iNaturalist for hours, but I'm sure that's boring for y'all to watch. Is it? I don't know. Maybe I'll do a TikTok about it. Okay, so what you're gonna do for this part of the assignment is go, if you can, go to the same place where you did your first assignment, or you could do it at the same time if you're very clever in how you plan it. Okay, and what you're going to do is you're going to take some pictures. You're going to be identifying and documenting a number of organisms around you, okay? I recommend taking pictures of them. It's very easy to take pictures of plants. It's a lot harder to take pictures of animals, okay? So that's fine. You can do it, and I believe in you, okay? You can try to, maybe you know things already, like maybe you know what the California poppy is, and so you can just say, I didn't need to use an app. I already know it's California poppy, and then you just Google California poppy species name and find it that way, okay? And you're going to start from the same spot where you did the sensory exercise, so that first observation one, and look at the plants and trees around you, okay? Which one, can you figure out which ones are the most common? Now, if you have what's called plant blindness, which a lot of people do, everything's just a plant, and it's very hard to see the difference. So part of this could be you starting to see the difference between different grasses, different trees, etc., okay? And then you're going to take 5 pictures of 5 most common plants or fungi that you see, okay? And then see if you can find 5 animals as well, okay? You can do, if you can photograph the birds, that would be fabulous if you're hearing them, but it can be very hard because, again, birds fly. Ooh, okay? And don't forget about bugs, okay? Insects, invertebrates, etc. A lot of people are there's a lot of fear associated with bugs. Most insects and invertebrates cannot harm you. Very, very few can harm you. And if you're in California, there are no brown recluses here. If you don't see armadillos, you will not see a brown recluse, okay? We do have black widows in California, but they are very rare in nature. They're very common in Los Angeles on like on people's porches that are kind of dusty, but they do not actually like to be around people. And most animals that are venomous, like rattlesnakes, if you're worried about rattlesnakes, be very clumpy so they know you're coming and they get out of your way because they don't want to waste their venom on you. You're a stupid person. They can't eat you, so they're going to try and get out of your way rather than try and bite you, okay? So please don't be scared of those things, but be very observant, okay? If you are trying to find more bugs or maybe some reptiles, if you go out during the day when it's very sunny, you might see reptiles sunning themselves. Like very often we see in California the whiptails, the whiptail lizards. And they sit on rocks. They like to, if you've been hiking and you hear something scuttle off, what's usually happening is a whiptail lizard was sunning itself, it heard you, and it ran away. Okay? Again, they don't want to mess with you. You're so much bigger than they are. They're not going to come after you. The only time an animal is going to come after you is if you're threatening its young. Okay? So, for example, a mountain lion or a cougar, however you want to call it, if you get between a mountain lion and its babies, it will come at you. Same thing with bears. I would do the same thing if I had a kid and some rando got between me and my kid and was just taking pictures. Okay? But just be aware of your surroundings and be paying attention and you'll be fine. Okay? They are not going to eat a person, especially in California where they're very well fed. Okay? Okay, so the main point of this assignment is to learn the scientific names of the common organisms around you, okay? Once you've made all your observations, you're going to make some sort of a document, like a Google Doc or maybe a slide presentation, where you have the photograph of your organism, its scientific and common names, where you found it. Again, remember, iNaturalist is really good at it just has all of these things for you. Okay, so if I was, it's very easy to take pictures of flowers, so I have many flowers. Oh, and these are also my other students that I have. Where are mine? Boop, here we go. Okay, so here's where you can totally tell where I live because that's exactly where everything is. But okay, so let's say this praying mantis that I saw. So I uploaded it. I know it's a mantis. So when I put in what it might be, I just put mantis. And it told me, oh, that's this family. And then someone else who actually knows about these insects came in and said, actually, it's one of these. And then someone came in and then I looked at it and I said, oh, I agree with you. So I agreed with them, right? And so now we need one more person to agree and then it'll be considered research grade. Okay. So, but if I were doing this, if I'm doing this assignment with you, what I would do is have a slide and I would have my picture of my mantis, one of my pictures, maybe multiple. The more pictures you can upload to iNaturalist, the better the observation you're going to get. Okay. You can see 120 people have checked this out. So that's exciting. Go back. So when I put this in my slide, I'm going to put the Mediterranean mantis, iris, oratoria. Okay, if you're typing, this must be capitalized, this must not be capitalized, and it's in italics. It's just the rule, there have to be rules so everyone does it the same way, right? And then I would put that it was found on Sherman Way in Los Angeles. That's it. Right? Is that all I want? Any notes you have? For example, this poor mantis was attacked by my cat, and now I'm worried about it. And so that would be the notes I put. Okay? Yeah, so you have to do 10 organisms. And I think this is the most fun assignment, but that's just me. Okay? Make sure you turn that in. You're going to analyze where you went. Okay? What kind of habitat did you view? You might be, if you haven't done biomes yet in your environmental science class, it might be hard to remember what these things are, but here's a way to talk. This is a nice what is this? This is a scientific paper talking about the different kinds of environments in Monterey. Okay, so it tells you different kinds of environments. You also could Google biomes. Okay, So this could help you kind of remember what kind of biomes there are. So there are 5 major biomes. There are actually so many more biomes. In California alone, we have 15 biomes, which is the most biomes of any state in the U.S. Okay, so I would go to something like this and say, okay, which one of these looks most like where I was? Was I by the ocean? Was I in a grassland? Okay, that is the thing about biomes is we describe them using their plants. Okay, so this is a grassland, or this is some shrubland within it. You'll notice that usually wherever you are, it's hard to get a pure biome by itself, okay? Because that's just not how science works. But you would do the dominant species here as grass, so this would be a grassland, okay? Okay, so here's a nice picture that shows you what these different things look like. If you're not going to be in a mangrove unless you're literally where mangroves grow, which are you would have to be in a tropical region. Okay, I don't know, okay. But yeah, so there's how you can get that. You could go in and say, okay, of the 10 species you looked at, were any of them unique to this habitat? That's called being endemic. So, for example, if you use redwood trees or the cypress cedars, those are only found in Monterey and nowhere else. Okay, well, the redwoods are not only found there, but some of the cypress trees are only found in Monterey and nowhere else in the world. Okay. Where do I find this information out? Well, I go and I find the species. Once I click on the species name, it takes me basically to the Wikipedia page, okay? Oh, they love doing this. Okay, so here's the Wikipedia page. And a lot of teachers will tell you, don't use Wikipedia. Okay, you know what? For this kind of thing where we're looking at a whole bunch of aggregated knowledge, it's not a bad resource, okay? Because it tells you where they are from, what they eat, and also you might have to do some Googling with some of this to say, where is this species found, okay? Because when I did this, I think there's a way in this, it'll say it's introduced if it's not actually from this place, or it'll say it's native to an area, and we're going to talk about why that's so important later. So that's native versus introduced. And based on what you've seen, what do you think this area looked like 200 years ago? Okay, so that's going to be a nice little list. You can do this as bullet points. Okay, so each species is a different bullet point. Turn that in. And then here's some more resources if you want. Okay, so there's some good apps. There's some good TED Talks. Here, John Muir's Law is kind of the guy everyone uses for nature journaling. He has so many different nature journal things that are for free on his website that I've used a lot. And he's just really good at finding interesting things to write about in nature or draw about in nature. And it's very fun. Okay, next. I believe that's all I'm having you do this week. Yep, here you go. Go ahead and reflect. Tell me about how you really felt about this assignment. Did you absolutely hate it and you're in the wrong class? Oh my God, I hate it. Or was it like, wow, I didn't, maybe this is something you do every week too. And you're like, oh, I found new species. Or this is the same species I always see. Maybe you're a birder and you are used to doing this kind of thing. Maybe you've never done this and you've suddenly found your new favorite hobby. I don't know. Tell me about it. Can you be wrong? Only if you don't answer it. Okay. So I've already talked so much for this week, but hopefully it helps y'all out. And please do not hesitate to contact me if you have any questions. Okay, I am absolutely here for you. The thing I hate about teaching online is I don't get to talk to y'all, but the good thing is you can do it on your own time. Okay, but please let me know if you have any questions and have an amazing week, and I'm really glad you're in this class.